Welcome to Building Fortunes Radio. Make sure you check us out at buildingfortunesradio.com. Along with KISK, our Keep It Simple Circle marketing partners, we are here to help our Humongous AM and Humongous FM radio customers build their businesses and make the world a better place. At Building Fortunes Radio, we know how much your business means to you and the people important to you. So join us to make the world a better place. Spread the word, tell a friend, and go make a difference in your world. Now on to our show with your host, Peter Mingils. Take it away, Peter.
Hello, everyone. Peter Mingils here. You are listening to us on the Building Fortunes Radio Network. This is the Ray Gebauer Show. We do this every Wednesday night, 11 p.m. Eastern. But it's Thursday where Ray is. He's over in Thailand. I think it's around 11 o'clock his time over in Thailand. And we are coming up towards the end of summer. It's actually the end of August. Can't believe it already. August 26th is today's date, 2026, for those people that are kind of keeping score. And we do this radio show at this time, and Ray usually covers an acronym. And we're on the acronym FIRE, F-I-R-E, and I believe that we are on, I think we're on the second R of the acronym FIRE. What Ray usually does is he'll do 3 radio shows per letter, and I know we did the F's, I know we did the I's, I'm pretty sure we did one of the R's. So now we're on the second R, I believe, and we're going to talk about whatever we're going to talk about. And Mr. Ray Gebauer is here. You want to take some notes. You want to be able to share this with other people for sure. And most importantly, you want to apply the stuff that Ray Gebauer teaches. So, Mr. Ray Gebauer, thanks for being here on your own radio show.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I appreciate you and this opening, this opportunity to share some ideas that can make a positive difference. I figured out a long time ago that one of the things we all have in common, besides needing oxygen, food, water, we need to, not what we need. What we all want is to have a better life. That's just universal, like oxygen. Sometimes it goes smoothly, and many times we hit bumps in the road or holes, which actually is for our benefit, because when we're challenged and we're in a state of discomfort, that's where we grow the most, which can give us a better life, going through the stress and the challenges. But so that's why I do these shows and write the books. I've written 12 books. I'm here to help people because I want to make a difference, and I want the world to be a better place, including your world, your personal world, a better place. So I like to organize information with acronyms. Primarily I used to do that just for my own personal use. And I realized, well, if that's helpful for me, it's helpful for anybody. We use acronyms a lot already anyway. So this acronym we're going through is the word FIRE. And the general idea is we want to sort of be on fire in a positive way. It means you're highly motivated, you're passionate, you're moving forward because you have a good purpose, a good reason. So the word for today that starts with R, I don't think Peter's there to interact right now, but let me say this. Last week we did it, the word was renew. I just want to say a couple things about that. Things can get stagnant, sort of flat, or sometimes going in reverse. That's a hard word, in reverse. So we want to be thinking, how can we optimize our life? And there's a great verse in the Bible. It says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. In other words, changing your thinking. Renewing, so uplifting, upgrading, like we need an upgrade. And so we want to be thinking, how can I change or improve my thinking, upgrade my thinking, which will affect our emotions, which affect our actions, and affect our life. So thinking about renewing your thinking and optimization is really, really, really important. I think my favorite word is optimize. How can I optimize my life? But today the word is reduce or reduction. And I like to put it in 3 different points so we don't have information overload. So the question is, and this is really useful, it's useful to use questions on this topic. The question is, what can I reduce that if I did, it would give me a better life? There's 2 fundamentals. There's addition and subtraction. So there's some things we need to add into our life to make a better life, and certain things we need to subtract or reduce. Some people, they think in terms of reducing their weight. But there's other things that are even more important than reducing your weight, though that can be important too, of course. So the first area that I think is really important for us to reduce is the proportion of our short-term payoffs and benefits compared to the long-term payoffs and benefits. Now, both are important. Short-term, I mean, we're hungry, we need food, need water, you watch a good movie. So short-term benefits are important, of course. But if you have too much focus on short-term benefits, you're not getting enough thinking about the long-term benefits. Like, big example for me is in our physical health. If you're oriented, that's a good word, if you're oriented primarily to short-term benefits, then you choose convenience. You choose whatever tastes good, and you compromise by eating foods that are semi-poisonous, that hurt you rather than helping you. You know, too much processed food, too much junk food. So there's benefits to that because it tastes good, it's simple, it's easy. But that can hurt you in the long run and cut years off your life and increase your chance of cancer and diabetes and heart disease. So especially in that arena, we want to think long-term. Will this decision help me live longer, to feel better, to be healthier? So we want to shift the balance more towards long-term thinking. What are your goals? What is your purpose? And just having clarity about your purpose will help you, live longer. So, like I said, the benefit for low-quality food, processed food is convenience and taste. But the wise thing to do is think quality, not low-quality food, but high quality, because it'll help you feel better now and live longer. Okay, point number 2. We also want to reduce the poisons, or the mental and emotional poisons that we're subjected to all the time. Some of this is self-induced, just our negative thinking, being pessimistic versus optimistic. People who are optimistic live, I think it's 7 or 8 years longer because pessimistic creates perpetual stress. So, but to reduce anything, you got to be aware of it. You got to think about it. Like if you have too many mosquitoes in your house or too many flies, you want to reduce the population of the mosquitoes or flies. So, same, Zig Ziglar used to talk about thinking. We want to, sort of ties back to my last episode, renewing our mind, renewing our thinking. So, unfortunately, a lot of people, because of stress, they're too much on the negative side, particularly with emotions. Emotions primarily come from how we think, how we perceive things. But some of the emotions can be really damaging, not because the emotions are bad, because there is no such thing as a bad emotion. All emotions are useful and good, including anger and fear and being sad or depressed. All those are good in the right timing and place, and depending on the duration. I mean, if your spouse or child dies, well, you should be depressed. But you don't want to stay that way the rest of your life. There's some injustice where you should be angry. But you don't want to stay angry, because it's too much of a good thing will hurt you. Sugar isn't bad. What's bad is too much sugar. So, and fear, anxiety, fear, worry, there's a place for that. I mean, even Jesus, he had so much stress at one point and anxiety that in the garden, before he got arrested, he was sweating blood. He was under so much anxiety and stress. But he processed it. He didn't stay with that. So we have to pay attention to our mental state and our emotions. If you get angry, well, fine. Maybe it was a good reason. Most of the time we don't really have a good reason. But even if it's a good reason, you don't want to stay there, because it ends up becoming poison because of the duration. Too much for too long. And the third thing we need to reduce is our unhealthy behaviors. So the question, it's always good to frame this as a question. What behaviors or habits do I need to reduce that would give me a better life? One of the big ones, it's simple, is we need to reduce our inactivity, particularly sitting too much. And if you have a job where you have to sit like all day, well, the way you help counteract the stress from too much sitting is you got to stand up, every like half hour, maybe like just for 30 seconds a minute, maybe bounce up and down, movement, or go up and down some stairs. But sitting too much is more dangerous than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So sitting is fine as long as you don't do it too much. Like, I go swimming every morning in the ocean. I like to go under the water. Well, that's fine, but if you stay under the water too long, you could die, right? So too much of a good thing, sitting is useful, but too much of it will end up hurting you. Staying up late, that's something I still compromise on sometimes. It's not healthy. Ideally, we should go down when the sun goes down. But now with electricity and lights and so many opportunities to spend time on the internet, it's easy to stay up late, which compromises our sleep and our health. Another unhealthy benefit is too much time proportionally with social media. Now, social media and television, all that can be useful up to a point. Too much of something that's good, it's like you have a big meal and everything's healthy, good food, but if you eat like twice as much as you need, too much of a good thing, it's not so good. And if you eat too much, you can end up just throwing it all up. So we need balance in things. Just because something is good doesn't mean it's still good if it's too much or too long. And the third example of I want to give on unhealthy behavior is isolation. Because we can so easily connect with people on the internet, through Facebook. It's easy to not be connecting to people in real life. And the social, digital connections through the internet, they don't benefit us near as much as face-to-face. And so we end up becoming isolated because interacting with people on Facebook really is not sufficient. It has its place. It can be good. But so many studies have shown the biggest factor in how long you live isn't even your diet or exercise. And most people don't get enough exercise. But it's your social connectivity. Even with strangers. of course, your family and your friends. But the digital connection has sort of displaced and sort of substituted for real, more authentic, substantive connection. The face-to-face. Okay, so that's the short version of what I wanted to say. Now, let me reframe all this from a different perspective. One of the 12 books I wrote is called The Single Cause and Single Cure for Every Health Condition or Every Disease. I mean, we have hundreds of diseases, and you can identify, well, what caused this disease and what caused that. But there's a general cause that's universal for every health problem. And if you say it's stress, well, you're close. But stress really is not the problem. We need stress. Stress is healthy for us up to a point. So the problem is stress overload. So when you have an overload of stress, especially for too long, that's like poison. That's what really hurts us, and that weakens us to the point where you can become like a sitting duck. If you're out there hunting duck for food, it's more difficult to get the duck if he's flying away. But if he's just sitting there, and that's an easy target, right? So we become a sitting duck for diseases when we have stress overload. And there's 5 kinds of stress that I've identified, that I write about in my books. The 5 sources of stress. So you have physical stress, like if you fall down the stairs, you're in a car accident, the parachute doesn't open, it may not end too well. So it isn't the falling that hurts you, it's the sudden stop. But so physical stress, including not moving enough, that's physical stress. Sitting too long, not getting enough exercise, always taking the elevator instead of the stairs. That's physical stress. Any kind of injury. Then you have, of course, psychological stress, emotional stress, most of which is self-induced based on our perception. And, stress can be good until it's too intense or too long. Well, it's really the duration that's the problem, not the intensity, but it's the duration. Too much of a good thing. But a lot of people live in perpetual stress, too much anxiety. I still see people wearing a mask as if that protects you from something. But if you're always in that mind frame of, I got to protect myself from this virus because I don't want to get sick, well, then you're always living in a state of fear. And people don't realize that no one in history has ever died from any virus. They haven't even identified a virus. The whole thing is imaginary. The whole thing is a big lie. No one ever died from COVID or anything else. Never isolated it. But people live in fear. So constant fear. The Bible says God has not given us the mindset of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. So fear isn't bad, but sometimes it's inappropriate. Here in Thailand, I read that there's a lot of snakes here. I've hardly seen any in 3 years. I think I've seen a snake 4 times, including yesterday. I used to have this huge phobia of snakes when I was a kid. So I saw a snake yesterday, so I jumped, but it doesn't bother me that much. But unhealthy behaviors or psychological stress is like having a poisonous snake, that's biting you, So we got to learn to manage our stress and live more in peace and joy and happiness. The third source of stress is electromagnetic. This one's hard to escape, and there's certain things you can do. But you got to be aware that cell phones and Wi-Fi is not natural, and it really stresses your body. And You don't want to overdo it. If it's not good to have your phone right next to your head. I always use the speaker phone, and the speaker on my phone. It's not good to carry it like in your front pocket, or, I mean, it's poison. It's invisible electromagnetic poison. And after a while, it's like too much, and it weakens your whole system. It pushes you towards being that sitting duck. Yeah. So electromagnetic stress is something you need to be aware of. And, ideally turn off the Wi-Fi at night so you're not being subjected to it at nighttime. So that's the third area. So you have physical stress, psychological stress, electromagnetic stress, and then you have chemical stress. This is a big one for probably most people. This is probably the biggest one, or maybe psychological stress. But the chemical stress from air pollution, the chemicals in water, pesticides in the food. The word side, means like to kill, like homicide, suicide, pesticide. It kills the pests, the insects, but it also kills us slowly. And so that's why you want to shift more to organic food or growing your own food. Don't drink the tap water because it has a certain amount of poison in it, in these chemicals. A little bit won't hurt you, but if you do it all the time, it weakens your whole system, and you're more likely to get one of these diseases, whether it's Parkinson's or stroke or cancer, heart disease. 50,000 people die every day on the average just between the top two, cancer and diabetes. Half the people now are getting cancer. Primarily because of the stress overload from chemicals. Your liver can handle chemicals up to a point, and then it gets overloaded, and then it doesn't end well. So that's the big one that you need to pay attention to. And then the fifth area of stress that we need to reduce. These are all, so the cure for all diseases is reducing the stress overload. You can't reduce stress. You don't want to. You need a certain amount of stress. It's like you need enough oxygen. If you get too much oxygen, that's not good. If you get too much water, that's not good. You can overload your whole system. And then people have died from drinking too much water, even though you need it. It's not just the quality, it's the quantity that can be stressful. Too much food, too much whatever. Now, the fifth area of stress overload that we need to pay attention to and reduce is what I call deficiency-based stress. In other words, you don't get enough of something that you need. If you don't get enough food, if you don't get enough oxygen, not enough water, if you don't get enough sunlight, if you don't get enough movement or exercise, if you don't get enough social interaction, if you don't get enough happiness and positive things in your life, you don't have enough gratitude, you don't have a clear, compelling purpose for your life. So if you're missing those kind of things, plus food, if you don't get enough green vegetables, green leafy vegetables, you don't get enough of the right foods, enough protein, enough healthy fat, enough omega-3s. So all these can be deficiencies that hurt you. It's okay to go without food for a few days, fasting, but too long, it won't end well. So we got to give enough attention to reducing the stress overload from deficiencies. Like if you get cramps, well, why? There's a reason. And maybe you're deficient in magnesium. And most people are deficient in vitamin D. Everyone's deficient in sunlight. There's a lot of benefits to sunlight besides vitamin D. So like I said, I wanted to reframe what I said at the beginning in terms of of reducing stress overload in those 5 areas, including your thinking. Well, I don't want to just repeat myself here, but that's a really useful way of looking at how can you improve the quality of your life, to feel better and to actually be better health-wise and live longer. There's a verse that, interestingly, that the reference is 9:11. Ecclesiastes 9:11, chapter 9, verse 11. And King Solomon said, "Don't be a fool. Why should you die before your time?" Well, people die before their time because we make foolish decisions, like not enough activity, not enough social interaction, not enough healthy food. Probably the most damaging fake food that's hurting us more than sugar is the seed oils. The oils from like soybean, the canola oil, sunflower oil, corn oil. All these oils are really, really harmful. And they use them because they're cheap, and they use it for fried food. They put it in food, other foods. Margarine is horrible for you. You need to have real butter. Butter's really good for you, actually. I use butter every day in my coffee and add to my food. But so we want to think in terms of how do I reduce the elements that are hurting me long term. Eating junk food one day is not going to make that much difference, but doing it on a regular basis, the seed oils, too much sugar, the deficiencies. So when you're aware that that's sort of like your enemy, that's some of these things you can call like a Trojan horse. Junk food, has its benefits. It usually tastes good. It's convenient. When I didn't know better, I used to eat a lot of Doritos because they taste great. I love them, But I don't eat them anymore because, once in a while, it won't hurt me. But I haven't had Doritos for a couple of years because I think long term. My goal is to live at least to 100. My mother, because her brothers died around 65 or so, heart disease, she figured she would too. I said, well, no, Mom, if you follow my advice, you can live to 100. I'm going to help you get to 100. And fortunately, she listened to me because I'm a holistic health doctor, and she did pretty much everything I told her to do. And she lived to 92. She said lots of times, I didn't think I'd ever live this long. Well, you did enough of the right things, But nowadays, even children are getting diabetes and cancer. Those used to be rare diseases. Now they're common. Half the people get cancer. 80% of the people are diabetic. 80%. Because of poor choices. Some of us just not being educated, not realizing how harmful things are. And some of it is just an assumption. I call it death by assumption. Assuming that what they're doing is unhealthy won't make that much difference. Because everyone else is doing that. If over 90% of the food in the grocery store is not healthy. But if it's there, you think, well, it can't be all that bad. Why would they be selling this stuff? The FDA would stop them or whatever. But we have to sort of think outside the box, the cultural box. Just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean it's a good idea. If you do what other people do, you get what other people get. And what do most people get? They get sickness. They get cancer and heart disease and diabetes and stroke and Parkinson's. Why? Well, going back to those two words, stress overload. Stress overload from the physical stress, electromagnetic stress, psychological stress, chemical stress, that's a big one. That's perpetual poison. We're getting poisoned every day from chemical stress. And deficiency-based stress. So when you pay attention, you can't eliminate all those stress, and you don't really need to. But it's the stress overload that's killing you slowly. Like Psalmist said, don't be a fool. Why should you die before your time? But most people do, because they don't give enough attention to what they need to do, and then you pay the price. You play now and you pay later. But the penalty for unhealthy lifestyle in all those areas is most likely some disease or disability and early death. So we need to spend some time thinking about what do we need to add to our life, and more importantly, in this culture, in this society, what do we need to subtract or delete? What do I need to hit the delete key on, or at least reduce? It's that we've got to reduce our stress overload in those 5 areas. Most people need to reduce, like I said, their inactivity. They need to move more. They need to reduce being inside too much, as opposed to being out in nature, and sunshine. Okay, I think that should wrap it up for today. I think this is really important information. I've written a couple of books on this topic of stress overload, and it's a model that I came up with myself, and I find it really useful to think in terms of how do I reduce my stress. Now, like I said, stress isn't bad. Stress is actually really good for you up to a point. Just like, water is good for you, food is good for you up to a point, but then too much, what could have been good in the right amount can become a poison, because it's overloading your system in those 5 areas. Okay, Peter, I call that a wrap. Any comments or questions?
No, I love this stuff. It's really good. It's certainly worth thinking, and probably people need to make a list of some of the things they need to reduce. So for those people that want to listen to this again, if you go to buildingfortunesradio.com, you can find the Ray Gebauer shows, and this is the second R in the FIRE acronym. And Ray, for those people that want to work with you, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, it's pretty easy. You just call my phone number. It's the Washington State phone number. The number is 425-333-8472. 425-333-8472. You can text me or call me anytime. If I'm asleep, because I'm like 12 hours ahead of Central Time Zone. But you can always call and leave a message. My phone's off when I'm sleeping. And I guarantee you that I can't help you if you don't call, if you don't reach out. But I guarantee you I can help you. We can have a productive conversation. Maybe give you more clarity or guidance or answer questions. I don't charge anything. I like to help people. So take advantage of my offer. And in the meantime, as Peter often says, to get more value from what I share from these shows, listen to it a second or third time. There's certain books that I go back and review, multiple times, because the more times you repeat something, the more integrated it is. Hearing something one time, tomorrow you'll remember 5 or 10%. And so reviewing things that are valuable information can be really, really helpful if we want to get the full benefit rather than just a fraction of the benefit. And do someone a favor, recommend this to other people you care about. If it's valuable for you, it'll be valuable for them. And so I encourage you to do that. So do yourself a favor and listen every week. Catch some of the back shows. I think they're all pretty good. And like I said, the reason we do this is we want to make the world a better place, including your world. We want you to have a better days where you're more happy and healthy. And that doesn't happen automatically. You got to be proactive. As in Stephen Covey's famous book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that's his first point, being proactive versus too passive. And a lot of people, they're too passive. And so and they get active if it's like emergency. But we need to be proactive all the time, especially in terms of our health, our physical health, our emotional health, our the physical, emotional, even our our spiritual health, our financial health. And one thing I did forget to say to help reduce your stress overload is you want to think of in terms of your identity. You want to think, what I do, I see myself as a lover. That's who I am. I'm a lover of God and loving people. Loving God and loving people. In the 4 C's, the caring, connecting, committing, creating value. I always talk about this because I think it's so foundational. So the more we are oriented to those 4 dimensions of love, of caring about people, connecting with people, committed for the win-win, what's best for everybody, and for creating value, that will significantly reduce your stress overload, particularly your emotional stress overload. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you, Peter, so much, and thank you for listening. Perfect. And God bless you all.
Excellent. Well, Mr. Ray Gebauer, thank you so much, and we're going to catch everybody next week, and we'll finish up the R's in the acronym FIRE.
You've been listening to Building Fortunes Radio on buildingfortunesradio.com. Thanks for listening. Building Fortunes Radio is part of the Humongous AM and Humongous FM radio network. Be sure to check out the buildingfortunesradio.com website to listen to your favorite shows. You can also hear us on Humongous Radio and wherever you find your favorite podcasts. It's been our privilege to have you listen in. At Building Fortunes Radio, we wish you the success you deserve and are willing to work for.